Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to talk you through the annual running costs of the vehicles that I own, and I thought I'd start in the shed, so come and have a look. Ignore the oil on the floor, that might be the BSA's fault. So welcome to the man cave and the toy den. I'll tell you what I've spent this year and why I think you can afford more bikes than you might think you can. I thought today I'm just going to do a quick video of my annual running costs because I think sometimes when you see a lot of vehicles and it looks like quite a big expense, but actually at the end of this video you'll realise that it's quite manageable. So I'll take you through bike by bike what I've done in terms of insurance, tax and servicing, and then you can make your own decision and hopefully buy more bikes. So we'll start with the Fireblade. So I've had this bike the longest and this is my trusty steed. I've never owned a Ducati and I'm aware of that and I want one, but I'd have to get rid of something. And I can't bring myself to get rid of this. It does everything I want, it's so fast and it's perfect for what I need. So this is staying. I paid about £6,000 for this back in 2015. Spent very little on it and it's probably worth the same if not more. So we've got three bikes here. These are the modern bikes and we've got the classic. So for each of the three modern bikes my insurance premium is £600. It's £596 and that's with Bennett's, which is incredible. For £200 a go, you know, there's, I don't know, £14,000, 6, 7, 4, 5 thousand pounds and maybe £6,000. So there's about £25,000 worth of kit insured there for £200 each. I think that's good value. In terms of the tax, so I ride the bikes interchangeably, but I don't tax them all year round, especially with winter. So for these, I've taken about £45 a year tax, which is about 6 months worth. I service these bikes every 2 years because they do a handful of miles. You know, they maybe do 1,000 miles a year, give or take, unless I do an extended trip. And every 2 years is about right for servicing, I think. You know, the oil, some of the oils last 5 years plus on bikes. I'm happy for it to be 2. You know, I don't race them or anything like that. So this got serviced in 2024 this year, and it was basically an oil filter at my local garage. It's got a K&M filter in anyway, and I do the brake fluid as a matter of boredom. So yeah, that cost me £150 this year, and it's at 14,500 miles. So the valves are at 16,000. We're not quite there yet. That'll be a bigger service, probably £300, but again that'll last me a very long time as well. So in terms of extras to this bike, since I bought it, I've done very little. As I said, I put some crash bobbins on, which did quite a good job of actually, if I don't say so myself. Changed the screen, and that is about it. I bought a baffle for the exhaust, which was very hard to find for this Yoshimura. Some of these exhausts have got an oval, a circular exit, and it's one of those where you've got to drill the rivets off to get the baffle out. I sourced one through eBay after months of looking, just in preparation for the undoubtedly the speed and acoustic cameras that are coming in. So in summary, £200 insurance and £150 service, that's £350, and about £45 tax. That cost me £400 a year this year to run, and next year it'll be next to nothing because I won't service it. So I think that's pretty good. And yeah, it's a bit of an underrated bike because on the channel I've got many different videos. I don't have that many of the Fireblade, partly because nobody's that interested in it. It's one of the bikes that it doesn't seem to get the same level of following, but I can't rave enough about how good it is. So maybe have a look into those. In terms of the Mille, so again, £200 for the insurance, as I've just said, £45 for the tax. And the service, it didn't have one this year. It had one last year when I bought it, and I'm going to do the servicing myself, but I'm going to make sure I write it in the book, and it's all documented. I've got all the receipts. In terms of 2025, it will be a case of doing the oil and filter and the dog bone. So I'm guessing maybe £120, if that. you know, £5 here for brake fluid and stuff. So no big deal there. It's at about 17,500 miles now, and we will take it in for a valve service when it's due. I don't actually know when that is. It had one at 16,000, I think, or 12. It'll be in many years for me. In terms of extras, I have spent quite a bit. So I overpaid for this bike, I think. Even the guy, he offered it for offers over 5,700 approximately, and I said I'll give you £6,000. It just seemed like a good bike and good value. Served me well. He was a nice guy as well. I've probably spent about 1,800 on it, so I've put a lot more money into this bike than I'll probably ever get back. But it wasn't about trying to recover the cost. It was just about pure enjoyment. So, you know, 500 odd pounds or so for the exhaust. We've put new screen on, the tank grips. We've got the airbox mod. We've got sprockets, chain, all sorts of different things on this. Stator, battery cable upgrade, loads of different things. But again, that's kind of outside of the running cost. So again, £200 for the insurance, £45 for tax, and a free year for servicing. So that's what, less £22 a month to run this. Pretty good going. The Tuono, again, and this is probably where I think my insurance premiums with the Fireblade were about £250 a year or something, fully comp. I do have a high excess. I've never crashed. I've never crashed the bike, but I'm happy to run a high excess. So I think the excess is £1,000 on each bike, but I get a low premium. You know, depends what your priorities are. So yeah, again, £200, 45 tax. Service, so it didn't have one in 2024. It's done about 2,900 miles now. We had the first service, which I paid about £300 for in 2023, and it was basically an oil and filter change and a software squirt. I will take it into a dealer because I want this to be stamped in the book. It's a bit different to the modern classic. Next year will probably be £150 for an oil and filter change. It's got a K&M filter now. I'll do the brake fluid myself, and we're at 3,000 miles. So the next major service is 12, I think, which is valves, which I'll need a small mortgage for. In terms of extras, so this has been an expensive year just because I'm trying to modify it. This isn't really running costs. This is just telling you what I've done, as you've seen. We changed the exhaust. So this bad boy was about £900. It's quite expensive. It's E5, Euro 5. It's fully road legal. You know what I'm like. The Gabbro map again was about £400. That was quite an expensive upgrade, but needed to be done in line with the exhaust. So we needed to do that. 1,200 give or take total. We've done chain and sprockets, we've done the tank grips, we've put a new screen on it, we've put the Evotech sliders, we've put a road lock, disc lock sort of jobby. That was on there when I bought it, so minus that, but that's a bit of expensive kit as well. Yeah, so I spent a bit of money on it. It's pretty much where I want it to be now. It's a very enjoyable bike. There's nothing else I've got planned for it. I've got some tyres already upstairs. I'll talk about that on another video and why I've chosen the ones I've gone for. But again, this year this has cost me about £250. Very, very little, I think, for what you're getting. And next year it'll be, I don't know, £400 with the service. So that then brings us to the trusty BSA. A little self-plug here. I actually went camping on this a couple of days ago. So yeah, check out that on the channel if you're interested. Really enjoyable despite it being a classic, and it's a bit harder work, everything. So the insurance on this is £150 a year typically. It's gone from 130 to 150 to 140, so it's about that ballpark. And it's on an agreed valuation policy, which is agreed at £10,000, which is more than I paid for the bike. So that's a good return, £150. I think it's pretty good. It's a historic vehicle, so it's had no significant changes. I say that with my tongue in cheek because it's had quite a bit done, but it's classed as a historic vehicle, therefore meaning no tax. So it's free road tax. And the service this year, I'll put my teeth back in, it was about £40. So I just used basically Duckham SAE 40, Duckham's SAE 40. It was an oil change. Clearly there's no filter. It's got a K&N air filter, and just a little bit of titivating bit of grease here and there, and that's about it. So again, to run this bike has cost me this year about £200, which is a lot of bike for little money. There's all small rent, in my opinion. In terms of extras, I've done a fair few bits to this as well, which have come at some cost. And the previous owner, if you watch the channel, has spent £9,000 on this. £8,992 and 12 pence. I remember it because I read it and I thought, my God, that's a lot of money for a bike he's selling for £9,000. But yeah, what have we done so far? So this year I put new LED bulbs in it, changed from the halogens because I was having an issue with the electrics. Again, if you watch the channel, you'll see my saga of that. Very easy rectification on the commutator, didn't know at the time. I think I've spent about £1,500 on it in total, which has included the front and rear brakes being re-skimmed in the hubs, repainted and stainless steel spokes. That was about £500–600, I think. We put new tyres on it because it had the Speedmaster on in the past, which I didn't like, so it's got the Avons now. And I've bought a big range of spares. Just because I don't have kids to pay for, so I like to buy something now and again, and kit for the bike, spares. Thinking that things may become obsolete in the future, I'd rather have a stock in my attic that I can maybe sell on in the future. So that includes many different gaskets, washers. I've bought a new oil tank because I'm going to get the bike resprayed at some point, and I don't think that oil tank is original. It serves a purpose, but it's not right. So I've got what I believe to be an original one. We'll get that resprayed and fitted. Same with the tank. I've got new stickers. I've just fitted a new chain. Actually messed that off my list. I paid only £20 for it. You've got to be careful when you fit the new chains. You can't go for an O-ring necessarily or an X-ring because it's just a bit too wide. This is, I'll capture it in the video of the chain I made, but this is just it's a £20 chain, and it looks a lot better. It's a black chain, nice silver rivets, and when you look down the line of sight, you can see the clearance between the engine casing is sufficient. It's not going to be bashing it. So that's good as well. And yeah, that covers the bikes, and I'll now take you to the MGB. Just before we move on to the MG as well, I forgot a couple of things. So you may have noticed that I've left the cap open, which may be a health and safety risk or whatever. I leave the bike vented because these bikes have got the plastic tank. Certain versions have got the metal tank. This one I know has plastic because I can hear it and I can see it. So yeah, with the E5, E10 ethanol fuel, and even E5 to an extent, it will expand, or it has the risk of doing so. So I just leave this vented, and actually I leave myself little reminders. So it says there, check high pressure fuel hose. So I actually disassembled the whole tank, or removed it should I say, and yeah, when I put it on once upon a time, I hadn't nipped up the high pressure fuel hose enough, so I will just double check that. You'll see it pissing out fuel, to be honest, but just to consciously be aware of that. A quick add-on and almost apology on this bike is that you may notice it's absolutely filthy, which is very uncharacteristic of me if anyone knows me well enough. I went for a ride on this yesterday. It was a terrible ride. The footage will come up, or maybe already be out, but it was tiptoeing around. It's time of year now, we're getting towards the end of the year, and it's probably the last time I'm going to ride it, was that ride. So it's filthy, and I'm going to look forward to cleaning it this weekend, which is, I would never store a bike like this. There's even possibly salt on it as well from this time of year, so that'll have a full deep clean. That's done, not getting rid of it again. Fireblade's laid up till next year. So yeah, just to finish off on there. And a final note on the BSA, I added some grease to the dynamo cover as well, so that probably cost me a few quid. But unbeknownst to me, I've been riding it with a dry housing for the new SRM belt. Hadn't checked it in the past, and I rang SRM, and they basically said you have to have grease in there. It needs to be a high temperature grease, otherwise it's not going to cool the belt effectively. So in anticipation of this one snapping earlier than its predicted life, I've bought another one, so that was another £30. And again, that's a preventative maintenance. I've got it with me. I'll keep an eye on the belt and maybe change it maybe next year, I don't know, but yeah, £35 extra for a little bit of preventative maintenance there. And again, I do leave myself notes. I've lost this one, but this bike will always wet sump despite having an SRM oil pump. So you might notice there's quite a lot of oil in the bottom of there. That's not unusual, but it has developed a bit of an oil leak that I'm just trying to trace. The vast consensus on the forums is just put more oil in, it's fine. But it plays on my mind, stuff like this, because from riding modern bikes, I'm not quite used to that having happened. And you may also see, just anecdotally, I have a bit of tape on the charging wire there, exactly at the point of the exhaust pipe. So you can imagine what's happened there. I've obviously started it up and forgotten, and that's had a little bit of a melt. But we're not through to the wires, so I think it's safe enough. So yeah, that's the bikes. And I don't think I've forgotten anything else now, but we can now go and have a look at the car and I'll tell you about that. Okay, by the power of editing and as if by magic, we're now here in the garage looking at the MGB. So annual running costs for this, again we'll start with insurance. So I paid £109 for this, which again I think is exceptional value given the fact it's insured for £15,000 agreed valuation. So if you took an average car at £15,000, a Ford Focus or a Fiesta or something along those lines, you're probably going to pay more than £109. And those have brakes that work and ABS and all that other good stuff. So I think that's fantastic value. Tax again is free. It's registered as a historical vehicle or an historical, never knew which way around is right. Servicing, so I do the servicing myself annually, and it comes to about £70. So for this year it was oil and filter, Duckham's Classic 2050, I've got a K&N HP 2004 filter, and we did a rocker cover gasket because we checked the valve clearances. So minimal cost, bit of grease for the suspension and whatnot, and yeah. Extras, again, not annual running costs, but total extras, I've spent about £2,500 I think on the car. What have I got here then? So we've got a Raceland windscreen which I've reviewed at the back to stop the wind hitting you on the back of the head. We've got a new exhaust, a Maniflow downpipe and then straight through with the silencer on the back. New stereo, boot carpet, many spares. I buy all sorts again on that. We've had new fuel lines. If you watch one of my recent videos, or I say recent, where I did the Morecambe to Whitby coast to coast run, we had a bit of an oil leak, fuel leak. So we've got new ethanol rated lines in the carburettor. We've got a battery box, and I've fitted, in terms of breakages, I had a new front lever arm on the suspension. It was leaking, the old one, and I think it was about £50 for an exchange unit, which is pretty good actually. Neighbours are going out. So yeah, in total then, so what's that? 109, 70, 179, and there's probably one odds and sods, £200 to run this car for the year, which I think is fantastic. So again, they're really cheap annual running costs, I think, for these vehicles, and you don't have to insure them every year, although I'd recommend you do. And you know, if you have a few and you service them yourself, and the road tax is cheap because it's historic and 40 years old, it's you know, it's a very affordable hobby actually, despite it looking like quite an outlay. And for me, I've always thought of it as cheap rent, because if you buy even if you buy a £10,000 motorbike and enjoy it for a year, you'll probably sell it for 9.5, maybe even 10. Markets are always going up anyway on these things. So future plug for this, don't have a specific date in mind, but I've approximated £3,000 for a total respray and a new roof or hood. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get them done. I quite like the idea of just using this car as almost a daily driver, and I think as soon as I've spent, you know, £2,500–3,000 on paint, I'm not going to want to take it to the same places. Probably not going to want to drive it as much as well, because you will get stone chips and it'll just be that niggling feeling at the back of my mind. So yeah, it will be getting done, but don't know when it becomes more of a garage piece than a usable car. And tyres, so the tyres are possibly around 10 years old. I do inspect them, there's no cracking on them and there's plenty of tread. So I'll keep an eye on those, but I think 2026 might be a good backstop for that. So that's the MG, and yeah, hope it's been an informative and useful video for you. Just thought I'd talk you through what I spend. And I've also just noticed a little highlight. I put pictures of my finest memories on this wall here. So I can do away with that now because we've done all the pricing, and I've not told you the total price. I will put it in the comments. Another little plug actually, you may notice I've actually got a proper microphone now, which is the first time I've actually used one of these, because maybe I'm cheap spending all my money on annual running costs, but finally got one of those, so that will help me give you better content in the future, I hope. And I've just noticed I've got my old pictures here, which I think is a fantastic idea. I've got more space for the next ones, but the thinking behind it was that for me, I'm very passionate about my cars and my bikes, and I've had so many good memories. And when I look back on best times I've spent, these are usually in the mix. You know, it's been a bike ride or a family meet or something I've done with a car or a bike. So I put my 6 or 7 or 8 best pictures on the wall here, and I'll just show you a couple if you wish. So in terms of just a quick one on those pictures, so my first proper bike was a Honda Hornet, again very capable. Look at that, this is France 2011. We all went on a family trip, and that was my granddad driving the MGB then. And another picture there in France. Bought my RSV Mille R, or RSV 1000R at 21 years old, so that turned a few heads when I used to rock up at Devil's Bridge. And again, many good memories on that. Shame I didn't have a GoPro though back in the day. Progressed from that to an R1, very formidable bike, that very powerful cross-plane crank, it was fantastic. And then bought the Fireblade in 2015, and I've kept it ever since. Look at that hunk of man there, maybe. And again, GoPro, one of the best things I've bought. This this Ford Focus RS, fantastic car. Absolutely amazing car, but I have no real footage of it, so life lesson there. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I'll maybe do this every year because there'll be different expenses and things like that. So yeah, but hope you've enjoyed watching what you've seen there, and look forward to catching you on the next one. Thanks.